Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Quinn O'Brien. Quinn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alex. I'm currently the CMO of Carnegie Learning. I've been here for about 3 years and about 30 years of background on both the agency side and the client side as well. I started out in Boston as a receptionist at a startup agency. There were only four of us. Did that for a couple of years and then moved to a big agency, Arnold, worldwide, and worked on the Volkswagen business and really just learned a ton about what it meant to be in advertising. Ended up getting married and deciding to move to New York. Got a job at Ogilvy and Mather. Worked there for about 10 years on IBM and had an amazing experience. Started to understand tech marketing, global marketing, and what it was like to work in a high functioning with really good clients. I left there, started my own agency, co-founded it with a partner. We founded a design and production studio that serviced other agencies globally. We were that offshore resource for these agencies for design and production. We ended up getting funding from McCann Erickson, and so worked in the McCann Erickson network for 2 years, and then actually left there to go over to the client side and went over to Lenovo, who'd been a longtime client of mine when I was at Ogilvy. Went over as the head of global brand for Lenovo. Moved up, became head of global marketing for corporate at Lenovo about 2.5 years ago. Left Lenovo and came over to Carnegie. At Carnegie, we're an education company. We're really focused. We have a huge background in research. We were founded by cognitive and computer scientists out of Carnegie Mellon. Use research and computer science to help students learn better. We're focused on the K-12 market in the US, working with district leaders and teachers to help students learn, which is really relevant nowadays because a lot of students are behind. There's not only a marketing challenge, but also a purpose behind what we're doing.
That's really exciting. I'm curious, what was that transition like to Lenovo when you went from the agency side to the client side? What were some of the things you had to get used to? What were the changes that you had to endure?
Yeah, it was a pretty significant change. And I underestimated it because I went into it thinking this is a brand and a company that I've worked with for 10 years. I was on the agency side and they were behind the firewall, so it was different, but I knew the people, the culture, the brand. I went into it feeling I'm just stepping over a line and will essentially do the same job. I was completely wrong. On the agency side, I always struggled with the fact that I only had a piece of the view into the business. So I was beholden to the individuals on the client side and how much they would expose me. I only got a sliver. I was trying to figure out how to do really effective marketing, knowing only a piece of the total picture. When I went over to the client side, it was the exact opposite. It was like drinking from a fire hose. So much information and so much access and insight and people that it's equally disturbing and overwhelming. The process of trying to figure out what information to pay attention to, what people to pay attention to, is almost as challenging as being on the agency side, trying to figure out how you get more information and get access to more people. So I went from one challenge to a very different one, but an equally challenging one. But at the end of the day, trying to distill down information is much better in the long run than trying to find and gain information. So I really enjoyed it. I liked having come over after having worked on the agency side for a long time because it helped me understand what it's like to be a good client and try every day to be a good client to our agency partners. It also gave me a ton of empathy for the clients who had gone before me, who I'd worked with. Where on the agency side, I would look at them and go, God, why are they making these dumb decisions? Why are they not giving me the information? Why are they so slow to get feedback to us? And then when I went over there, I was like, oh, I got it. It makes sense. I'm making decisions that the agency sees probably, but in the context of our business is exactly the right move. It does take a long time, so I am being slow. All the things I would complain to myself about when I was on the agency side, I was trying not to do, but I was also empathetic to everyone else going, now I get it. I was fortunate that I went over after I went over with a bit of perspective, which helped me to get through that transition. I was helped by the fact that I knew most of the people when I came over, because at least I think they gave me a bit of the benefit of the doubt coming in. that maybe I wouldn't have gotten if I didn't know the people.
I want you to ask yourself a question. How much of the data that your business collects is actually used to drive contextual marketing campaigns? The capabilities of the marketing industry are evolving rapidly, and that's great news for businesses. More data is becoming available at increasing levels of granularity, and that data can be used to create better marketing campaigns that better resonate with your key audiences and increase customer conversion rates. Marketing tactics are becoming more focused and contextual, which is bridging the gap between B2B and B2C marketing. At the end of the day, we're marketing to individuals, whether they're buying on behalf of a business or whether they're buying a product or service for their home. My name is Alex, and I'm an expert in data, analytics, and direct marketing. I've managed over $70 million in media spent, over $10 million in agency fees, and I have a proven track record in lowering cost per sale in direct marketing, digital media, and paid search campaigns. I use data and analytics to dive into campaign performance, identify growth opportunities, and action on those insights to deliver business results. I've worked at companies like IBM and DirecTV, where I've leveraged LTV analytics and customer insights to identify profitable groups of customers and drive demand amongst those customer groups. The secret is in de-averaging campaign and audience performance, understanding the components of profitability and tying that together with audience segmentation. So the question is, are you using the right data to maximize your marketing potential? Grab time with me to learn how you can get the most sales out of your marketing efforts. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I'm curious because having experience on both sides, what is your advice on how to be a great client-side manager of an agency? What's typically missed? And from people who, like myself, haven't been on the agency side, and what do you recommend for somebody on the client side to be the best client?
That's a really important question. I think there are a couple of things. One is really push your agencies so that you understand what they do well. So you have an agency operating in their sweet spot. When I was at Lenovo, we had a design agency. All they did was design, and they were best in the world at it. We had an agency that purported to do everything, but really they were exceptionally good at advertising. We used them for advertising. Same thing on the search marketing front. As a client, focus on understanding what does your agency do best, and then give them that work so they are in their sweet spot. The second thing is labor the brief. Make sure that you're not being lazy in briefing your agency. The temptation is, hey, they're a bunch of smart people. Let's just give them some information. They'll figure it out. That doesn't work for the agency because they have a narrow view. They don't have your perspective. Take the time to really go through, really understand why are you even engaging them? What's the goal? What's the problem you're trying to solve here? What does success look like? Who's the audience? Like all the fundamental aspects of the brief. A lot of times clients will go, they know who the audience is. They've been working on our business for a while. That's that. Take the time, have the discipline to go in and fill it out. A lot of times you'll realize as you follow the brief and say, what do they think today? What do we want them to think in the future? That maybe the answers aren't quite as obvious as you would assume they were. So really a couple of days more spent laboring the brief will cut off days and possibly weeks of churn and revs with your agency, and it'll make the partnership a lot stronger. Understand what they do well, brief them on that, but make sure the brief is really tight. And then let them go and trust them. Clients who haven't worked with agencies, they look at them and they're like, they're different than us. And so I don't really trust that they're going to do this right. And you've got to just go, we hired the best in the business. We did a pitch. Let's trust them and let them do their job. Be aware if they're not doing it, you might need to change. You can't micromanage your agency or else they're going to go from strategic conceptual partner to order taker, which is what you don't. And so there's a lot of pitfalls, but I always tell when I do interviews with college students who are coming out into the workforce trying to land in marketing, I always say, if you have a choice between going into an ad agency or the client side, go into the ad agency out of college because it's a high energy, long hours business. When you've been doing it for 20 years, getting that energy up and the late nights and the weekends is really hard. So when you're young and coming out of college, you've got the energy, you've got the time, go do the agency work. That will make you a really good client when you make that transition later in life, because the client side is more stable, it's more manageable. You can see the problems coming, so you can plan your days better. When you're further on in life, maybe you're married, kids, you have a mortgage, having that stability and predictability is really valuable. Whereas when you're young, straight out of college, the vibe, the energy, the long days, the long nights, that gets you going. And it also teaches you a ton about the craft of it.
I wanted to ask about something when speaking with agencies. I'm curious if you agree with this and why this is the case from your perspective, but you're not supposed to ask the agency what other clients they have or how much time they're dedicating to your project versus other projects. What's the reasoning behind that?
I think if you're asking that question, it's because you don't feel like you're getting the attention that you need on it. And so suggests that there's a problem either with the team you've got at the agency or with the relationship overall. The ideal situation, when I've been on the agency side and also in the best agency client relationships, that question would never come up. Because even though if it's just a relationship conversation, as a client, you should feel like the agency only thinks about you. Whether that's true or not, they should make you feel like you're their one and only priority. If you're a small client, going from Lenovo, which was a massive client with a lot of spend, to Carnegie, which is a smaller client, you have to have more realistic expectations. I'm not spending a ton of money with this agency. I know I'm not buying the people out. I'm aware that they have other responsibilities and I should be respectful of that. But at the end of the day, on the relationship side, I just want to feel like when you're in the room with me, I am your sole focus and our business is your sole focus. On the finance and negotiation side, different story. If you're doing a retainer, you're negotiating percents of people's time. And so you really do want to understand what percentage am I getting of this person? And is that real? If you tell me I'm getting 50% of this person, am I really getting 50%? Or do you have them working 4,000 hours a year and so I'm really getting an exhausted person for 40 of their 80-hour weeks.
Sense.
It's also just the relationship you have and how you ask it. I had a really good relationship with the last agency that we worked with at Carnegie with their lead. We would talk a lot about the other clients he worked on because it was interesting. He would never disclose anything confidential, but we would talk about at a high level, what problems are they facing as an agency? How are you guys tackling it? I would always find that there was some parallel to what I was dealing with. So in that case, I wasn't probing to go, why aren't you giving me more time and attention? I was just looking at it and going, hey, you work on IBM on the other side. They're massive. We're tiny. What problems are they dealing with? And he's looking at it going, they're trying to figure out how to optimize their SEO. And I was like, okay, that's great because we're struggling with the same things. So maybe we can learn from that. In some cases, the agencies have actually hosted mixers where they get their clients together. Generally not in competitive industries. You'd get together with them and it was a little bit of catharsis because you're like, oh my God, you're dealing with this issue, I'm dealing with this issue. But it was also just nice to get other perspectives from people from other industries.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that sort of collaboration. Marketing has evolved so much recently. As marketers, we have to continue to think about new marketing techniques, new ways to run our marketing. How do you find new innovations in marketing? Do you find that it's becoming harder to find completely new marketing applications and use cases? Or do you think we still have a long ways to go in terms of innovating in marketing?
I think we still have a long way to go in innovating in marketing. Where AI has come to date and where AI is heading and the impact that's having on marketing. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, when we were kind of talking about the metaverse a lot and those things, it felt a little more capped. It felt a little more like I can see where it's going versus today where I'm looking at it going, I don't know where AI is heading. I don't know how that's going to change marketing. I've got some ideas, but as you watch each next rev of ChatGPT and Claude and all these other solutions come out and they're making step changes in what they're able to do, you almost stop trying to predict the future and go, all right, let's just keep up with it. And I've realized as I've gotten further on in my career, my job leading marketing is not to know everything. I've got too many things going on. I'm too far removed from it a lot of the time. And so my job really is hire the right people who really understand and are native to the innovation. We have an example. We just brought on a summer intern out of UT Austin, and she was amazing at helping us understand how to connect on different social platforms. So not really innovation in a sense, but just more how to use social media properly. The reason she was so effective, she's incredibly bright, but also she's totally native to that world. She wakes up in the morning and creates content, not as part of her internship, but as part of her life. The ability to help us understand how to do something on TikTok that's going to go viral was unlike anything. I can come at it logically and strategically, and it will get 100 views. She came at it as a ball of knowledgeable energy, and we get 6 million views. So I think hiring people, and you look at each, so she's helping us on social, you look at analytics and marketing operations, same thing. We're hiring people who that's their passion. On the weekend, they're reading the journals that have in-depth study of HubSpot and really understand how the plumbing behind HubSpot works. Whereas I'm looking at it going, I understand why we use HubSpot. I get reports that it's going really well, but I'm not sure exactly how it works. Then you look at our team and go, wow, they really deeply understand it. And our biggest pressure is how not to have them poached by a company like that. So I think there's a world of potential for where innovation's going, and I rely on those people who are native to it, expert in it and passionate about it to guide us there. A lot of it is just trusting my team to help me make the right decisions on things.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this for some time now about what is the mindset that you approach the day in. One thing I've picked up on is that senior leadership is focused a lot on the work that needs to be done and the people who are doing it.
Yeah.
Can you give us a window into what some of those people-related decisions look like for you? What are you thinking about as a CMO?
Yeah, I think you framed it up exactly right. My job boils down to three things. It's selecting the right people and organizing them in the right way, making sure that I really understand what the business needs, hire the people who can help deliver on that, and make sure they understand the roles and responsibilities and process. So I need to understand the business goals, the priorities of our CEO, our chief revenue officer, and our head of product. I need to make sure that these people I've brought on my team are working on the right things. I have a fire at their back, running down these paths, working on the right briefs. Then once you've got that rolling, where I spend most of my time is just clearing the biggest obstacles out of the way. So really communicating often with my team, understanding where are they running into problems that they can and should solve, and where are they running into problems that I should solve. And to me, a lot of that is building relationships within the leadership team of the company. If we come up against a problem built around our sales force coming out of sales, I can call our chief revenue officer, say, hey, here's the problem we're facing. How do we sort this out together? If it's a product issue, call the CPO and say, all right, how are we going to sort this out together? That's how I look at it. Each side of that is get the right people on, make sure the people understand what they're doing, brief the people properly, and then work with other people to clear obstacles out of the way. So I do spend most of my day and think most about relationships with my team and also with those key people in the larger organization, and obviously my boss, who's the CEO, and how to make sure we've got a mind meld and I understand not only the business goals, because those are pretty concrete, but also what are his goals? What's he trying to achieve around the edges that I can help do as well? When we get together as a marketing leadership team, we spend a lot of time talking about people, talking about the team, talking about the people that we're having problems with and challenges with within the business, and how to grow and nurture our staff. We are a people business. Our chief product officer believes the same thing. I don't invest my money in products. I invest my money in the people who are building these products. And that's where he spends his time as well, is really making sure that they're enabled and equipped to do their job. I don't spend a ton of time working on marketing campaigns anymore. I spend a ton of time making sure that the people who are developing the campaigns are clear on their role, clear on their brief, and have nothing standing in the way of doing their best possible work.
How would you advise somebody that's looking to get into a leadership role that has the technical skills and wants to get into that?
The way I developed how I work as a leader is really from the leaders who came before me, the people I've worked for over the years. I've worked for some really strong leaders and some who were not strong. It's been a lot of introspection, coaching, like corporate coaches, therapy, like all sorts of different avenues that have helped me to start to pull from both sides of that. I worked for a guy at Ogilvy who was amazing. His name was Gunter Schumacher. I always go back to what would Gunter do in this situation? He was my very logical boss who had clear eyes and would see a situation for what it was and make decisions based on that. I worked for a woman named Kathy Ryan who was not logical, but was just, and she was a great boss, but fiery and passionate and would rally the troops and get them going. And you would run through walls for her because she had that emotional side. And you were like, I want to work for that woman. That's not as natural to me. I really struggle with that. I'm more Gunter than Kathy in terms of how my brain works. But I learned from both of them. I've worked for some bosses where I haven't enjoyed that experience at all. It's helped me catch myself because, again, talk about good clients, bad clients. It's like good boss, bad boss. No one walks into the office in the morning going, I'm going to be a bad boss. They're reacting to stimulus just not in the right way. I've got the same stimulus happening. I've got employees who are complaining about stuff. I've got employees who are crying about stuff. I've got employees being passive aggressive with other employees. And how you deal with those challenging situations, I've learned from those above me. And I've also learned how not to deal with them. And I try really hard to be that positive influence. So I would say thinking about how to take your technical skills and use that as a stepping stone to get to the next level. Think a lot about those people above you who have not only had great technical skills, but also you've always seen as a leader. You've wanted to work for, you've been excited to meet. Like I said, you'd run through walls for them and really try to deconstruct what was it about what they did and how they worked and how they led that made you feel like that. And then go try to be that to the people under you. It's a process of looking at the situations you're in, the team you've got, and thinking, how can I be the best person to them? I always say to the people I work with, we're not a family. Families are dysfunctional. Everyone's got the weird uncle who shows up at Thanksgiving. We don't want to be a family. It's very tempting to say, oh my God, our marketing team, we're a team. I love football. And you're not hiring people who get along. You're hiring the best people at their position. You're creating a culture where they want to go win, and then you're organizing them and giving them a playbook that lets them win. The culture is a really important part to that. I've seen teams of superstars in football who don't win because there's no culture. There's nothing cohesive holding them together. You can't just hire rock stars and hope they do well. You got to make sure that people are clear on their roles and working well together.
When you're at work, how much of your time is split between strategic thinking and execution, between problem solving in your head and actually doing stuff like hands-on keyboard work?
It's probably 70% of the time is strategic work. A lot of it is meeting with 4 team leads on a regular basis to understand from them what's standing in your way. And that's a lot of our conversations. How's it going? Where are you challenged? Once we identify them, we're clear on like, all right, I'm going to go try to fix this. You try to fix that. A lot of the conversations are problem solving. It's not like we can't figure out how to get this link to work. It's we can't get this information from this team and we need it in order to build out this web page. Let me work on why we're not getting that information because no one's holding it back. It's just for some reason they can't get it. Let me go in and try to sort that out. So it's 70% of it is that sort of stuff. And then 30% of it, I really try to stay in the work itself. So building presentations or building analytics reports. Even though I've got people on my team who do those things, like to actually dig into lead data and get an export of an Excel file from Salesforce and go through 1,000 records and look at the titles of all the leads that are coming in. Even though that takes a couple of hours, I come out of that really understanding at a granular level, like our business the marketing side of our business much better. Because I then can go like, all right, I get the very clear view of who's raising their hand, filling out a form and wanting to know more. What form did they fill out? It grounds me. I don't want to spend 70% of my time doing that, but having the ability to go in and be hands-on, this is not me trying to take your job. This is not micromanaging. I explain to them, this is why I do this. It gives me that granular view of the business that really helps when I have the bigger strategic conversations. I have a fear of just floating above everything. I don't want to be that person because particularly in a mid-sized business like we are, you've got to roll up the sleeves and stay really grounded. It was one of the challenges I had at Lenovo. I was running corporate marketing globally across 180 countries. I was so high up, and the decisions I was making, there was no way to see the actual impact on a customer or on the business. I was disconnected from the work itself. It was probably valuable what I was doing, but I was missing that 30% of actually being in the work itself. And so that's how I try to balance it.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, for somebody who wants to get into being a CMO, that's their goal. Do you recommend that they go for a MBA or any kind of secondary education?
No, I wouldn't. I think there's certain companies where you'd benefit from that. If you want to be the CMO of P&G or Unilever or Accenture or somewhere like that, you would benefit from and might need an MBA to get that job. I would say 95% of the CMO jobs out there, you don't need an MBA, and just personal recommendation would be it's not worth the time or the money. The time it takes you in the classroom or to go study for that MBA would be better spent doing the work and living the job. I teach MBA classes in marketing at Duke. I see both sides of it. I always try to make it really real for the class to say, I'll teach you the marketing funnel. I do undergraduate too, or I'll teach you some of the advanced analytics. Just recognize that if Mike Tyson said one time, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It's like that. When you go into marketing, you can study the theory of how to write a brief, how to brief an agency, and how to read an analytics report, but it's really messy once you actually get in and try to do it. In very rare cases, you need an MBA, but if you don't have one, it will in no way limit your career.
Mm-hmm. How do you approach professional development for yourself?
For myself, in industry groups, I'm in a couple of networking groups with other CMOs. It's part education because you're sitting around talking about the marketing issues that we're all facing. And it is similar. All the conversation right now is what do we do with AI? How do we use AI to run more efficiently and make the content and marketing more effective? It's very informationally helpful, but it's also inspiring. It's cathartic. I remember I was at Lenovo, high-tech hardware, and I was talking to the woman who was the head of marketing at Purina, talking about dog food. In my mind, I'm going, I don't know why I'm talking to her. Our worlds could not be more different, like high-tech hardware, dog food. She started talking about the science and innovation of pet food. And we got into it and suddenly realized that there were parallels. The stuff she was dealing with, like the R&D department is just so far over the horizon that I don't even know what they're talking about. And I've got the same exact issue. It gave me peace that I'm not the only one worrying about this sort of stuff. So that's where I do the PD because it's a little bit less about content development. AI is different. I spent a lot of time learning about AI on the side. Pre-AI, I wasn't spending a ton of time boning up on marketing stuff. It was more meeting with my peers and talking about problem solving and the stuff we deal with.
I like that.
If you're aspiring to be a CMO, I've always said to my direct reports, like, get coaches. Like, there's nothing, I think there's a stigma sometimes around corporate coaches that it seems like you only get a coach when there's a problem. I think it's the exact opposite. The corporate coach can be influential in helping you develop your management and leadership style. I'll always pay for coaching for my leaders. I try to coach them, but it's almost like when your parent tries to tell you something and your friend tells you something. You listen to your friend. You don't really listen to your parent that much. And the coach can sometimes be like that. When you're coming up, when you're starting to lead and manage people, get that advice. Don't feel like you've got it all figured out. Go out and get a professional. by your side. The biggest breakthrough I ever had was from a conversation with a corporate coach. When we started working together, she started with, tell me about your parents and your relationship with your parents. And I was like, that's a really weird place to start. But it was therapy. It helped me understand why I struggle to have certain conversations and strategies. So I think as you move from being individual contributor, subject matter expert to manager and leader, recognize that being a good leader and manager requires as much discipline and focus as learning the technical side of the business. Devote yourself in the same way to building those management and leadership skills. Some people it comes a little naturally, but you still need to put in the time and practice and understand your weaknesses.
Do you think there's any parallels between parenting and management?
Yeah, I am a parent. I've got two girls, one of whom is going to be a junior in college and one who's just heading off to college. We're empty nesting at this point. I think there are some parallels there, particularly as I'm getting further along in my career, and a lot of the people that I'm hiring are in their 20s or late 20s, and I've got daughters who are coming up to mid 20s. There's a big generational difference. There's a big difference of mindset across different generations. From a management perspective, being able to understand how that generation thinks, how they make decisions, where they get their energy from, how to have a productive conversation, how to give feedback in a productive way. That's what I've learned from parenting. It's helped just to think about working with a younger or different generation. It's helped me get out of my head and way of doing things and get into.
So I want to pivot a little bit to, as a marketing leader, how do you define success? And how does that differ between the different levels that you're at in the business? Let's say an analyst versus a manager versus a CMO. How does each of those levels define success for you?
Yeah, I look at success across four different metrics. Two of them are market-driven business metrics, and two are internal. The two big ones for us are brand awareness and sales. We're not as well known as a lot of our competitors, so we need to get more people to be aware of us. We've got a sales target, and I take on that sales target in partnership with our chief revenue officer. It's a shared goal, and I know that marketing only plays part of it. I do the same with my team where I say, this is our revenue target. We've got to hit it. There's always a lot of pushback on that because the marketing function generally looks at it and goes, we only influence sales. Like we may drive leads in, but we don't close leads. Marketers and probably humans want goals that are 100% in their control. It's not the world we live in. So I look very much at high level brand awareness. Are we moving the needle? Are more people knowing and engaging with us? And then absolute bottom of the funnel, are we hitting our sales targets? Internally, we have a really great HR department, and they always are polling the company and understanding kind of the pulse of the company. I realized as we were growing, we were forming into stovepipes, and we weren't collaborating as effectively as we did when we were small. They set up what they call a collaboration quotient and said they issue a quarterly survey. And essentially, it's how well do these other groups work with you? It asks everyone that same question, and then they're able to tell me as a marketing leader, is marketing a good collaborator with the other groups internally? And we've seen that if we collaborate well, that drives significantly better outcomes across the board. So I look at the collaboration quotient in depth with my team. Then we look at ROI, the percent of our total revenue that the marketing investment represents. We set targets for each of those and feel like if we're building awareness, driving revenue, collaborating well, and delivering an increasingly better return on the marketing spend, then we're doing well. Under each of those, we have our must-win battles, the battles that we know we have to go fight to raise awareness. We know we have to go fight as marketers to drive revenue, et cetera. And that's our focus when we meet on a weekly basis as the marketing leadership team. We're looking at how we're tracking against the goals and how are we doing on these initiatives, these battles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That references what we were talking about before with managing people and how big of a part that is in the leadership role. So
and I think there's the softer side of managing people that we've talked a lot about. There's also the quantitative metrics-driven side of managing people, which is really important. I really believe in putting numbers on paper at the start of the year. There's an awareness increase, a number of social followers we need to grow, an engagement level increase, a number of leads, et cetera. There's about 16 actual metrics. And the goal is to have every single person in marketing be able to see the impact of their work in one or more of those metrics so that we can sit down and have a conversation with anyone on the team and go, I know that the work you're doing in marketing ops is directly driving the quality of the leads, which is something we measure. So let's talk about that metric and why it's down right now and what we need to do to help get that metric up. We're crushing it on lead quality. Keep doing what you're doing. You're nailing it. That's great. Build a team, build a culture, make sure everyone's clear on the brief, but also make sure everyone understands what success looks like in their role and make it quantifiable. Expose them to the numbers on a regular basis so that they start to not dread the conversation about how things are going, but instead they're hyper aware of it. And it's a productive discussion of either we're in the green and so keep going, or we're in the red and what do we do? I think that quantifiable KPIs are really important.
This is really interesting. Final question. You mentioned earlier that looking into the future, it's really hard to predict where all of this technology is going, and I totally agree. There's so many different places AI can go. Depending on how well it gets, it will displace a certain amount of jobs, and we don't know what that'll look like or where the competency will be. I know it's difficult to predict, but I'm curious, what are the next upcoming developments in marketing that we can expect from a high level, including AI, but also other tech?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, our marketing strategy is going to improve by light years. The ability to look at the business goal to say, this year we want to hit X hundred million in revenue from these types of customers. This is our approach we're going to take. Selling these products to these types of customers. We can do that today as part of our annual business planning. But then taking a step back as a marketing organization and saying, okay, what marketing programs are we going to put in place? How are we going to actually structure our marketing so that we achieve those objectives? Is a lot of sitting in a room trying to figure it out. Whereas I think with where AI is going, it suddenly becomes incredibly clear what we need to do. And I think because now a lot of the answer to what we should do as marketers lies hidden in the data that we all have access to. So in our case, we're very much a sales-driven organization, like most. We've got an immense amount of data in Salesforce that tells us every single touch point and behavior that a customer or a prospect has had with our brand. The ability to go in and really mine that data to form and build marketing strategies to say, okay, if you want to sell this product to this audience for this amount of revenue, here's exactly how we do that. And then all we have to do is go execute on that because we know the strategy is exactly right. I think there'll be less finger in the air trying to figure out which way to go. It'll become very clear. And then it's just about how do we make sure we've got the right data. It's not garbage in, garbage out, but really clean data that AI can then go mine. And we as humans really understand the prompts to put in, but it goes and does the hard work of drawing the insights out of it. I think at a high level, that's going to transform our role as marketers. I don't know that takes jobs away at all. I think that is just making us much more laser focused and confident in placing bets on what we need to do. I also think that one of the things I'm really encouraging my team to do is don't look at AI as a threat to your job and don't see it as a zero-sum game. Instead, look at them as an assistant who is just getting smarter. They started out as a dumb assistant who could provide a bit of information and tell you what the weather is and that sort of stuff. And now it's sitting by your side and going, do you want me to write that for you? Edit. Someone who reports to you, you would probably look at what they produce and then put your spin on it. At some point, they're just going to keep getting better. You can start to ask them to do more sophisticated things for you. But at the end of the day, understanding the direction we're going in as a marketing organization and what we're trying to achieve, your role, your job, and your brief, now you've got someone who can help you do it. If nothing else, it's going to allow you to do better work, to do it faster, to do more of it, And so it should get you really excited because you can do this. I was working with our head of design on this. I went into it thinking she might be skeptical about this because she might look at all these image creation technologies and everything like that. She was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't have to do the grunt work of building out the foundational elements of the design anymore. It does all that immediately. And I can spend my time tightening it and bringing nuance to it. I'm a huge optimist on AI and its potential within marketing. I think it's going to make us smarter very soon. The holy grail I've got in my mind as a CMO is being able to directly link what I do and what my team does to the success of the business. I want to be able to say, if we need to grow our revenue 20%, I am going to tell the CEO and the board, this is exactly what we're going to do. And I will show you exactly the impact that it had and the revenue that it drove. Or whether it's a different goal, but revenue is kind of concrete. It's hard to make sure we're steering in the right direction. I think that AI will take all that away, and I'll be able to go in and go, I have 100% confidence in what we're doing, and I'll show you that it worked as soon as we've got it in the field.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm glad you're an optimist. I'm also optimistic on AI. I really hope that it's a very big positive impact on our economy and our productivity. Thank you so much, Quinn. This has been such a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Thanks, Alex. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you soon.